Everybody that's joining, good to see you on Instagram Live this evening. I'm just patching Graham Kiggan in. There he is. How are you, Graham?
I'm well, Steve. Thanks, and yourself.
Good, yeah, very well, thank you.
Can you see me there?
I can see you fine, yeah, thank you. Just turning my
Great.
volume up here.
Okay.
Just got people logging in as we've started here.
It's
And
a it's a fir it's a first time for me. So pressing stuff and getting it done. Yeah, no.
and for me as well.
The grey hair is a bit behind the time, but we're managing.
That's brilliant. And the way you've positioned that light, you've got a nice. You look angelic. It's shining. Lots of wisdom coming off your head there. That's awesome. Great to see you tonight, Graham. Thanks so much for joining, and welcome to everybody that's joining on Insta Live. Great to see you, and great to have you with us tonight. And tonight we are chatting with Graham Kiggan around the subject of developing resilience. And as part of our promo, I used the line that I borrowed from another book on tough times called "Tough Times Don't Last, but Tough People Do," which I really like. That I think summarizes what we're talking about tonight, Graham,
Yeah.
with resilience. So maybe just for our the guys that have logged in and obviously logging in at the moment to listen to this. Graham is a friend. Graham and Denise are friends of myself and Jax. They are on eldership at City Hill together with us. Graham used to be at Unilever, was a director there for a number of years, and then towards the end of your work or end of your time there, Graham, I remember you telling me that Unilever said to you, "We don't really have another project as big as the one that you've just been involved in," and paid for you to become trained as an executive coach, which you've been doing
That's
for the
right.
past, it's about 10 years, eh?
15 years, Steve.
15, wow.
Yeah.
And yeah, and apart from that, so apart from coaching exec teams around the country, also been a massive blessing to our local church, head up our counseling team as well, our business mentoring, if it's underneath that. And then also just thank you for your input into my life personally. You've shared loads of wisdom, helped me along the way with fresh ideas and fresh thoughts. So I've been really looking forward to this conversation tonight, Graham. And maybe I could start off just by asking you, what makes you so passionate about coaching and helping people, and this idea of resilience? Why is it such a big deal to you? It's a word that you use often. And yeah, maybe just to set the platform for some of the how-tos and stuff that we'll discuss later.
I think I'll divide that into two. Firstly, my passion starts because I really believe it's a calling. It's a calling from God, and part of the purpose of my life, Steve. But resilience is a passion for me, and I think it stems from my coaching leaders in business, and I'm bumping into men and women who are under stress, on the treadmill, working hard, trying to juggle work life, home life, and what I'm seeing is these people can be divided into two groups: those who are coping well with stress, and those who, with exactly the same stress, maybe aren't doing quite as well. And so I was fascinated by the subject simply because of that. Why do some people cope and other people not, for exactly the same level of stress? I found that quite a fascinating subject. And I felt if we could get to the root of that and understand what drives resilience, that we could really help people in tough times like these right now, Steve.
Yeah. So I love what you're saying there, is that it's not the level of external pressure that defines us, but rather our internal resilience and how we cope and interact with that pressure. And sorry, I interrupted you.
No, so that's absolutely right. Yeah. It's not, and you know, the good thing about resilience is you can grow it. You know, you can develop resilience, and I guess that's the subject we're going to be talking about tonight.
Yeah.
Is
so
how do you grow that?
Yeah, maybe jumping to, if I could say, giving us some of the why would we want to develop more resilience. To your mind, people that have got high levels of resilience, how does their life look different from people that have got low resilience? What are the benefits of developing resilience?
Okay, so an interesting thing, and I think there are two areas that we can define, and the one is health, the somatic side of it, and we'll talk about that, and the other one is what I call just quality of life. So if you look at health, people with low resilience battle in certain areas. So things like immune diseases, asthma, arthritis, cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, tension, headaches. All of those things come from a low resilience. Wow. And I think you can imagine, I remember one of the friends I had would take 2 grandpas a day to try and cope with his workload. And that's just not good and not healthy for you.
Yeah.
The second area, Steve, is what I call quality of life. And I think it goes around when you're stressed, your brain doesn't operate clearly. So you're in fight, flight, or freeze. And so your ability to think is really diminished. So I think we've often had times when we're sitting with people or you're in a meeting and somebody makes a bad call. And afterwards you say to someone else in the meeting, I don't think they were thinking. Well, in fact, they weren't, because they were stressed. They were under stress. Their blood wasn't going to their brain. It was going to their arms or their legs for fight or flight. And you had a poor thinking, poor quality decision making. The second thing under this is interpersonal relationships. So when you're stressed, your relationships aren't as great. You tend to make snap decisions. You tend to snap at people. Your brain's not working as well. And so relationships, children, wife, colleagues, all these people take the strain. Somebody coming out from work in the evening, kicking the dog, doing whatever. So those 2 areas, the somatic and then the relationships, thinking, quality of thinking, are really key regions around stress, Steve.
That's amazing. And I love the fact that you say we can grow in resilience. We're not just locked into one method of coping for the rest of our life. And I guess that's what you're devoting yourself to, is help people figure out their own patterns, their rhythms, their ways of thinking, because every person's resilience would look a little different. We all fashion differently. There's not a cookie cutter course that you could go on to develop resilience. It's figuring out your own methods, your own ways, your own, I guess, your thumbprint of reacting with stress and interacting with it and changing that as you go. Am I kind of on the right path with that?
Absolutely. So we say you got a window. Each of us got a kind of a window, and some are small windows, some are big windows. And for each, and the thing I've become really aware of over the years is that, especially diet. So Denise and I are quite heavily into making sure we eat well. And talking to the nutritionists, what you realize is what works for me might not work for someone else.
Yeah.
And we're all quite individual, and it's the same with stress. So each of us needs to find, and I guess we'll talk about it at the end, some practices and things you can do to cope with stress. Each of us need to find what works for us, what's really important in our lives that fits our lifestyle, that fits our family, and that calms us down as an individual.
Yeah. Graham, I suppose there's a little bit of obvious in this, but in terms of your interacting with people over this time of lockdown, you've still been coaching. In fact, you've been very busy. Loads of your coaches have been in contact with you. What, to your mind, are some of the things that are causing the unusual stress now related to other times? Let's go back to February, January, etc.
Okay. So we all live with a level of stress, and
that's not a bad thing.
And some stress is good. Absolutely. Yeah. Eustress, they call it, is quite a good thing. But at this time, we've got COVID-19 laid over the whole thing with the lockdown as well. And that just brings a whole new level to us. I think there are probably a couple of things. Number one is we're not used to being locked down. We people who like our freedom. We like to be able to travel. We like to just get in the car and go where we need to go. So there's a restriction placed on us. That's important. The second thing is there's a high level of uncertainty. What does the future hold? Will my job be secure? Will I have an income at the end of the month? Will I have an income in 6 months' time? Can I feed my family? I think those are really stressful questions. The other thing for those of us who are busy and sitting like this on social media, sitting on Zoom and Microsoft Team or any of those other platforms, is they are new to us. Not new, we use them, but now we're having to rely on them. And having them to rely on them brings a whole new level. If you just look at the Microsoft Teams, Zoom, or any of these others, you know, we're now having to work through that, and you can't see every bit of my body language. So you're having to anticipate, especially in the coaching and a team environment, you have to anticipate what's happening on the other end. And that can be quite a challenge because you're not getting all the information at the same time. And so you're sitting in these meetings, and they're also quite challenging because if there are 10 of you on a meeting, you can't all talk. You've got to, the meeting leader needs to be very structured. The chairman has to be quite structured in how he does it. And then you also got all these faces looking at you as well. So you're on the screen, everybody's got their video on, everybody's looking at you. And so you're quite conscious of how you look. How am I showing up on the screen at the same time? So that, and having children at home is another level as well, Steve. The kids are at home. What do we do with them? They're running around. How do we cope? So I think all of those things are adding significantly to the stress at this time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember chatting to you last week and you saying how over the weekend you had absolutely hit the wall on the Sunday and just slept for a few extra hours and realized that it was the number of video conference type calls that you'd done in the week. Just the newness of it created the stress on some of those things. Any of us will develop fitness, but there's so much in this space that is new that I guess our brains are in that stress, a heightened stress zone to normal.
You know, Steve, I think the other thing is it's new to us. And I like the way you said you can develop fitness to it, because I think you can. I was listening to one FBI negotiator who said, actually, guys, having Zoom's a pleasure. I've been working on crackly telephones, phoning into the Amazon jungle and whatever to try and get, and I've been able to do it. And you develop the skill, the hearing, the seeing, and so you can get fit to it. But it certainly wasn't an unusual experience. I know a lot of my coaching colleagues as well, after 2 weeks of being on Zoom all the time, just absolutely were tired. But my experience in life, I know when I came out of the corporate and went into coaching, and you were seeing many different clients, I wasn't fit for that in the first year. I was terribly tired. But I worked out of that. I'm now fit to be able to change gears, change cultures, and so you develop that skill and that ability. So to all of those of you out there watching, take heart. You will develop that skill and that practice with time.
Yeah. Graham, you shared something with me a couple of weeks ago that I've really been thinking about, is how on the continuum of stress, we're all facing the same thing in terms of lockdown, but how we interact with it is different. But there's a continuum that on one end is just stress, and then it can become trauma in other people's minds. And the way that the different parts of our brain interact with stress can actually leave us living in a low-level sense of trauma. Could you enlarge on that a little bit? You've got the expert language for that. I'm just saying it in layman's terms.
Okay. So it's a lot of the work we do, that I do, is around emotional quotient and EQ. And it's impacted by the brain. And so the brain is very loosely divided into two sections. So the one is the thinking brain, the prefrontal cortex up in front here, which processes information, and we think with that. And the other one is the limbic system, or the what they call the survival brain or lizard brain, sitting at the back of our head. Now, the survival brain is what is aroused with stress. So it prepares us for stress. It prepares us for action. And the way the survival brain works, Steve, is it's scanning the environment all the time, looking ahead and saying, what can go wrong? But the way it does it is it looks backwards and says, what's happened in history? What does history look like? And based on history, wow, this either looks fine or it looks really risky. And I must prepare for stress. In other words, prepare the body for fight, flight, or freeze. The other part of the brain is the...
Sorry, could I interrupt you there? A large part of that is also subconscious.
Yes.
That lizard brain, that's just operating in the background like an operating system on a computer.
That's just operating in the background, scanning, Steve. Absolutely. So it's another way to look at it. He looks at life in a glass half empty way. Okay, it's like I want to see what's going to go wrong. So it's a half empty view of life. The thinking brain is a bit different. So it says, I need information and I want to plan ahead. I want to plan, make sure, and to do that, I need information to, in fact, do the planning, do the thinking, be logical, be structured. So the thinking brain goes now and it goes and starts looking at the news, looking at social media, and starts collecting information about what's happening right now. When the information comes in, the survival brain says, oh my goodness, this is really bad. I didn't realize it was this bad. So the information is now hyping us up. The thinking brain then says, well, we need more information. So it goes out and listens to all the theories that are going around at the moment, collects more information. And so we start the spiral down of collecting information, scaring the lizard brain, all of which is happening at a subconscious level. We're absolutely aroused and our stress levels just go up as this happens. And we'll talk a little bit about social media a bit later on, I think, and news and how much we need to take in.
Yeah.
What then happens is we move from stress to trauma. Now, a lot of people think of trauma as, abuse, motor car accident, or hijacking.
Yeah.
But trauma can be much lower than that. So as we go from stress, if we feel powerless or if we're in an uncontrolled situation, we start moving towards trauma. And the thing, Steve, is we don't actually realize that we're in that shift. And that's the danger for us. And that's why I'm so passionate about talking about this right now, because I'd like people to be resilient and be able to stay in the stressful state and not move all the way across to trauma.
Yeah. So I like what you said about the feeling of being out of control, because there's a lot every day that we can't control. It's more obvious to us now. We can't control the spread of coronavirus. We can't control the lockdown calls that the government are making. While we might agree with them, we've got no control, but we do have a lot of control of what we do in our environment. So I guess a question that arises from that, if I'm moving towards the trauma state on that continuum, and you say I might not realize it, this low-level trauma, what would be some of the signs that I could say, boy, if I'm feeling like that, maybe I'm experiencing this low-level trauma and I need to do something about it so that I can head backwards to just having stress?
So it's an interesting question, because in fact, when we go into trauma, very often you'll hear this from trauma cases, is people numb down, they numb their brain in order to not experience the trauma. They kind of put it out of their mind. And so that's a risk for us, is that we pretend it's okay when in fact it isn't. And one of the ways of identifying that is mood shifts, mood swings.
Okay.
If you're working in a team of people, somebody just suddenly starting to become very quiet. They suddenly just start not being exactly as they were before, or they start overreacting in a bad way. But usually it's they're numbing down, so they're going to the quiet place. Stress headaches, it shows up somatically in the body, feeling aches, feeling pains. All of those things start saying to us, actually, you're shifting across into trauma. And also you start discounting what's happening around you. Because your body's trying to numb down, you start discounting the impact of what's around you. And I think the other thing that's important is you start not responding. So you don't plan, you don't look after yourself, you don't eat well, you're not going out and being proactive about buying food and things. You almost go into a bit of a lethargic state as well. But all of that is designed to try and protect you at this moment.
So is that your brain's way of shutting down some of the systems and saying we're just going to conserve energy to survive longer? And that's not healthy for us. We want to be moving back into having feelings, thinking about it, processing it, being proactive, etc.
Absolutely. That is exactly what we have to do. And in order to get resilience, we have to find a way to just move back, Steve, to a place of stress, but where we can start applying resilience and starting to cope.
I heard something interesting. I was chatting to some people, just touching and finding out how they're doing, and two of them said when the president's voice comes out over the airwaves, they felt physically nauseous. His last couple of announcements, it was just a knee-jerk reaction of their bodies. And after hearing you talk about the stress trauma continuum, I thought to myself, that's probably on the lower end of trauma, where your body has now got this knee-jerk reaction of feeling physically nauseous to the president's announcements because it's triggering all this uncertainty around us.
And interesting that you make that comment, because I would say there was probably something similar happened to them in the past, because your brain is scanning forward. So as soon as you pick up a situation like this, I'm not quite sure what it was in their lives, where they might have been sick and ill at the same time, and so it's generating the same response now. And so often our bodies, for them, it's nausea, for others, it's a headache, whatever it might be. But absolutely, Steve, yes.
Yeah. So I guess the really big question is then, knowing some of this stuff, how do I develop resilience? How do I become more resilient? What are the practices that I can put in place daily to help push and pull myself through these moments? And I'll get better at it over the course of a lifetime, I'm guessing. If I do well now, that builds resilience for next time, etc.
Well, the good thing is we can develop resilience. And really, I'll go through the list now, but I always quote Ernest Shackleton when him and his 28 men were trapped in the Antarctic. For 18 months, their ship had finally sunk. And for 18 months, they never saw anybody. In fact, they were on ice and in boats. That's all they were for 18 months. And the crew, all of them, and they all survived. I mean, it was a miraculous story, that. But for me, what Ernest Shackleton did is he said, guys, we have to stick to routine. So for 18 months, every Saturday night, they would put on a play. And it might be the same play over and over, but they did it. They
had in the ice.
In the ice, absolutely.
Wow.
And in fact, when they were on lifeboats for a while, they did it even on the lifeboats.
Wow.
And so he was really good at doing that. So swabbing the decks, feeding the dogs. They acknowledged Sunday lunch, even if it might have been the same as what they had through the week, because I think finally they just got down to penguins and seals as what they were eating. But he stuck to the routine. And I think that was, and they all say that's what got them through.
Wow.
So what routine does is it creates certainty for us. So the survival brain is now saying, oh, I can anticipate that. I can anticipate that. And by the way, when we had that Sunday lunch, it really went well and it was nice. So we start anticipating stuff that feeds back to the brain that says, the survival brain, that says there are good things happening. I get up in the morning, Denise and I have a routine. We get up in the morning, we always have a cup of coffee, and we do a bit of a quiet time together. So we read the Bible and pray. So that's a good start. I always get dressed, come into the office. So you find,
even though it's just down the passage.
And even though it is just down, it is just down the passage. You're quite right, Steve.
Yeah.
It's just down the passage. But I do it because it, and even in lockdown now, I've mowed the lawn on Friday. Our lawn was always mowed on Friday, and I've stuck to mowing it on Friday. So there are a whole lot of routines. So the other thing is playing games on a Saturday night, if the family does that. Start finding those fun routines to put in place. And it creates certainty for the kids and for yourself as well. So that's really an important one, I think.
So putting that routine is actually, it's helping you develop resilience. It's helping you make it through, get through tough times, become tougher, and give your brain some certainty in a sea of uncertainty.
In a sea of uncertainty, absolutely. The other one is to monitor the news media. So I spoke about the fact that the thinking brain wants information, but that doesn't necessarily help the survival brain. So again, what Denise and I have done is we just don't. I used to watch the news in the morning. I don't do that anymore.
Okay.
I really monitor what I watch, and I will watch in the evening because I need to know what's going on, but I'll watch for maybe half an hour. I monitor social media. I stay away from conspiracy theories. Don't go there. And so monitor the media, monitor what's going in, because what's going in is feeding your survival brain or feeding it bad stuff. And so we need to just be careful about what we take in.
So to that point, while you're reading the information, you're lapping it up. You're not seeing the long-term effects of being constantly connected right at the time that you're doing it, but it's a build-up over time. Am I understanding you correctly in saying that? Take it in bite-sized chunks for the long-term good.
Yeah, and quite frankly, not much is happening every day. So if we don't, it's almost like we sucked into it.
Yeah.
And the habit of just going online, and we need to manage that very, very carefully. Yeah.
Awesome. What are some of the other things we can do, Graham, to build resilience and to keep moving from trauma back towards just the lower end of the stress continuum?
Connecting with people is really important. And it's important to have good people in our lives. I think it struck me that friendship is just, it helps regulate our brain. In fact, regulation is a good word, because regulation, we need to be self-regulating. And when you're with friends, in fact, Denise and I had a group of 4 dinner club friends on a Zoom session this afternoon. And it was great to just hear where everybody is. They're like-minded, they're positive, they're believers, they trust God. And so you come off feeling just built up, and we enjoyed that. So it's finding your tribe and staying away from people who will bring you down. If you know that's going to happen, don't go there. Now, in coaching and counseling, we have to be helping people all the time, and that's great. But I think just make sure you stay with folks who are going to build you up and keep that connection going. I'm also lucky I can shout across the road at my neighbor. And so we talk, and my neighbor on the other side, and we talk. And Denise says, Graham, I've never seen you running outside so much. And I stay on my side of the road and they stay on theirs. But it's a connection. And I've loved that. I've really enjoyed that connection. And in fact, developed some really nice friendships out of it.
It's brilliant. I also read, I think it wasn't something you sent me, that laughter and a sense of humor helps us self-regulate. And after I read that, I reflected on it, thinking of the gift of teenage sons in our house who are just, from often morning till night, it's just everything is seen through a lens of the funny side. And last week we had a get together. It was my sister's birthday. She's in the UK. And so all 5 of us siblings, 4 of us are married. The 9 of us got together and played 30 seconds via Zoom and just laughed for about an hour and a half. It was a funny evening. And I walked away thinking, actually, that helps me just stay positive and moving forward, being connected. In that case, my biological tribe, helping me laugh and feel connected. So, yeah, I love that point.
Absolutely. And in fact, the other night we were playing games as well with our family. And Christy and Mike put together a whole lot of bad dad jokes. And so we did bad dad jokes on Zoom, which was really phenomenal. And I still remember some of them. I mean, I really enjoyed those. But
Brilliant.
Steve, I think probably 2 areas that people maybe dismiss a little bit, but are really important. The one is exercise.
Okay.
And some cardiovascular exercise. And, a lot of people are doing exercise apps right now, and I would strongly recommend we get into that. It's part of also anticipating. So it's part of the routine, is just making sure we do exercise. It just gets the blood going, it gets the body going. If there is some stress, it uses up the stress hormones as well at the same time, gets them out of the system. I put my heart monitor on when I mow the lawn, and I score discovery points. I get maximum discovery points. It's quite a job to mow the lawn, but it's been a great thing to do. So I think exercise, if I can really stress that, is important.
Yeah.
And the other thing is eating well. There are many jokes at the moment and many memes about staying in your pajamas and not seeing what's happening to your weight and all those kind of things. And they're funny, but at the same time, there's a dark side to that. And I think we need to be very aware of this time of what we take in. So almost 90% of your body's serotonin is made in your gut. And your gut is also called a bit of there are a whole lot of nerves and things that go down there. And so I think we need to just be careful and concerned that we don't binge eat at this time. Because, there is, when you're sitting at home, there is the risk of just reaching out to something. It's in the fridge.
Yeah.
And we need to be a little bit disciplined. We need to to focus on having good meals, regular meals, and not getting caught in that space. So eating and diet is really important for us. If I can just really stress that as a key issue.
Yeah. And another thing for me, which has been a great learning, is that our sleep rhythm stays similar. That we don't change our bedtimes too much, because that's also part of your body's way of self-regulating. Or if you're sleeping at the same time for a similar period every night, it's your body's way of regulating itself, and a really huge part of our emotional well-being as well.
Well, a lot of the brain's cleaning out happens at night. A lot of the survival brain goes to work at night, and so that restoration happens at night, and so it's really important to get sleep. And in relation to sleep, under stress, it's difficult to sleep, but it's the calming things. It's like spending time in prayer or mindfulness or whatever it is that you do. For us, it's time in prayer. Just quietening down and calming yourself is really of value and importance. That's
awesome. Graham, I really do appreciate your time tonight. And for those that logged in after we'd started, we've been interviewing Graham Kiggan, a friend, a fellow elder at City Hill Church, an executive coach, and an all-round man of wisdom. And I know you live these things out. It's not just theory that you are saying to us, Graham. Also, really appreciate how many practical things you're talking about to develop internal resilience. This isn't stuff that's out there that we've got to become some kind of expert to do. This is within reach of every single one of us. And thanks for just helping focus us on this idea that if we're moving to trauma, we should recognize it and try and move backwards. And the things that will help us are the routines, our tribe, sleep, exercise, food, and reflection. Every morning you talked about your faith and spending time with God, connecting with Him. I think that's a huge part of all of our lives as well. So thank you so much. Really do appreciate your time. Thanks to everybody for logging in and watching this. And there will be a recording of this available both on Instagram and on Facebook tomorrow. So Graham, thanks so much. Hope you have a good evening, and thanks to everybody for watching.
Thanks, Steve. Cheers, then.
Great. God bless.